Hey, welcome to Crossroads, folks. Donald J. Trump has been ripped out of the campaign trail and thrust into New York City, where he has to stay for like 2 months because Donald Trump is facing trial right now. He has to stand in front of a jury, the whole 9 yards, the first time this has happened. And Donald Trump basically has to talk about that Stormy Daniels case, the one where Stormy Daniels wrote an official signed letter with her name that no affair took place and the whole thing was fake. And it was a misdemeanor, but Alvin Bragg elevated a misdemeanor to a felony and then multiplied a single misdemeanor 34 times into 34 felonies. And now Donald Trump is facing criminal charges for something that was already beyond the statute of limitations, meaning, well, it's really nothing, frankly. But Trump is pulled out of the campaign trail regardless. And if he is charged by what appears to be a very opinionated judge, Trump could go to jail, well, actually go to jail this time. Let me explain. Basically, the first criminal trial, there have been a lot of ones, but this is the first actual trial for former President Donald Trump, began yesterday on Monday. This will likely be just the first of many leading up to the 2024 presidential elections. And keep in mind, there's a lot going on right now. On Thursday, they're going to be hearing at the Supreme Court whether a president can even face charges like this. And so Trump's presidential immunity is going to be on the table on Thursday. And on Friday, the Supreme Court is going to be hearing the case on January 6th, the case that could overturn a lot of the prosecutions on grounds, of course, that, well, the case was made for Enron, disrupting an official proceeding. Meaning the building blocks at the foundation of these narratives can possibly be pulled out later this week. But just because there's so many cases all at once, I want to kind of clarify what is what and when is each one happening. But this one is about Stormy Daniels, and the judge yesterday laid out the limits on what evidence can be shown. They made the first steps in choosing their jury, and they said that Donald Trump will need to appear every single day in court or he will be arrested. And this is, of course, taking Trump off of the campaign trail. Now, let me show you first the surface story of how this whole thing went down. New York Post said that Donald Trump is at Manhattan Supreme Court on Tuesday, where he'll sit through Tuesday, today, right? Where he'll sit through jury selection in the first criminal trial against him. The quote-unquote hush money trial began Monday with screening of potential jurors, at least 50 of whom were dismissed after saying they could not be fair or impartial. No jurors were selected from the dozens screened. This is the first time a former president has gone to trial over criminal charges, which stem from six-figure hush money payments to the ex-president allegedly made to former porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy playmate Karen McDougal ahead of the 2016 election. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in an effort to, they say, cover up the payments to keep Daniels and McDougal quiet about alleged affairs the women say they had with him. The trial is expected to last about 2 months, and Trump faces up to 4 years in prison if he is convicted. Because it's a criminal trial, the former commander-in-chief must show up at court every day that it's in session. And that is according to New York Post. Now, I'd say there's a lot more to every single piece of that. Let me show you some of it. This is a bit more. Now, first, remember, Stormy Daniels was not saying she had an affair with Trump. She keeps changing the story, but she actually said this in a signed document with her name, saying it never happened. She wrote in an official letter in 2018, quote, "The fact of the matter is that each party to this alleged affair denied its existence in 2006, 2011, 2016, 2017, and now again in 2018. They denied it over and over and over and over again, literally, both her and Trump. And she said, quote, "I am not denying this affair because I was paid hush money, as has been reported in overseas-owned tabloids. I am denying this affair because it never happened." Signed, Stormy Daniels. Now look, you might remember at the time she did an interview with 60 Minutes, though, where she admitted to signing this document and then changed her story. This was 60 Minutes in 2018, and here's the interview, folks. Stormy Daniels, quote, I felt intimidated and bleep, honestly bullied, and I didn't know what to do, and so I signed it, even though I had repeatedly expressed that I wouldn't break the agreement, but I was not comfortable lying. After, of course, repeating this previously in many, many years, again in 2006, 2011, 2016, 2017, and 2018. But she said this time she felt pressured to sign this document and say nothing happened, right? Anderson Cooper then says this to her. How do we know you're telling the truth? And Stormy Daniels says, because I have no reason to lie. I'm opening myself up for you, possible danger and definitely a whole lot of expletive, right? Anderson Cooper says, but there's a potential financial upside maybe. Somebody will want to write a book. Maybe, you can get on a bigger tour and make more money, or maybe go on all these major left-wing news outlets. They're going to promote you and make you the biggest star in the country. A porn star, but a star nonetheless. Stormy Daniels says and then Anderson Cooper cut her off dancing. Stormy Daniels then says, that's a lot of ifs. If I could also get shunned. I mean, I could automatically be alienating half my fan base right at this very moment. Now look, in other words, she had a lot to gain. Fame, exposure, a lot of a different kind of exposure. Stuff that she would not have gotten otherwise. And of course, you do see that she's become a name known across the whole world right now. So there was something to gain, of course, but who knows? Who knows what the real story is? Again, she's changed the story multiple times, and she said publicly and affirmed and then signed a document affirming that nothing happened multiple years, right? She denied it over and over again, and then she changed her story. But either way, she's lying. She's lying about one side of this. She's either lying about what was signed in the letter, or she's lying about claiming she was pressured to sign it, right? Or something else. But one of the sides of this, she's lying on one side. We don't know which. Now, that being said, at the same time, though, that's not really the issue here. Even if Trump did have an affair with Stormy Daniels or McDougal, it's not legal. There's no crime committed in that, even though it's unethical. The big accusation was that he paid her hush money, and then he allegedly falsified business records on it. Now, look, normally that would be a misdemeanor. It would not be a big charge. That would be very minor, technically. Not only that, but this is actually a misdemeanor, if it was even a crime, a misdemeanor that was already past the statute of limitations. Meaning under normal law, Trump could not be charged on this. But we've seen again and again in the legal attacks on Trump that they don't care about that. When it came to, of course, the rape charges and so on, which turned into, of course, him, of course, undermining this woman's credibility, the other charge, that was also past the statute of limitations, and then New York changed the law to allow for a brief window where people could file charges based on older crimes. And because they actually changed the law briefly, Trump was able to be charged on that one. It's very similar in this case. Trump is being charged on something that legally he cannot be charged with. And even then, remember, it was rejected several times before when they tried charging him with it. But what Alvin Bragg did was took that misdemeanor that was past statute of limitations, elevated the misdemeanor into a felony, and then turned a single misdemeanor into 34 felonies. Kind of the opposite of what they're doing in every other part of New York, by the way, where people are just in the revolving door and they're lowering felonies to misdemeanor, not elevating misdemeanors to felonies. In fact, there's even stats showing this, that Alvin Bragg and other DAs very frequently lower felonies to misdemeanors. Elevating a misdemeanor to a felony is almost unheard of, especially in New York. Now, Fox News legal analyst Jonathan Turry had a great take on this. Watch.
Everything about this case is, in my view, legally absurd. This case is basically a state misdemeanor that had run out on the statute of limitations. And Bragg was forced, after he declined for a long time to bring this charge, to do so. His predecessor rejected it. And so they took a dead misdemeanor and bootstrapped it into effectively trying a federal crime. But the federal crime here under election law was rejected by the Department of Justice. They didn't feel that this should be charged. So you have this crazy case that's going to go forward, and it's going to turn on the testimony of people like Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen just recently had a judge call him a serial perjurer. And he's going to appear as the center of this case.
Did you hear that name, folks? Michael Cohen. And if that sounds familiar, it's because he's been one of the people at the center of a lot of the Trump accusations. Michael Cohen is a former Trump lawyer, and he has, in fact, had issues with lying on many different cases. One case in particular, this is a Forbes article on him back in October last year. This is it. Forbes said this: Cohen, who served as Trump's personal attorney and fixer prior to turning against the then president after pleading guilty to criminal charges in 2018, meaning, of course, his freedom kind of hinges on some of this stuff and his credibility, took the stand Wednesday after giving damaging testimony on Tuesday. They said, again, this is last year, in which he claimed Trump directed him and then Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisenberg to challenge the valuation of assets on financial documents in order to reach whatever arbitrary net worth Trump wanted for himself. Again, Cohen was one of the architects of the whole thing where they tried to, lower the value of Trump's properties in order to criminally charge him on that as well. Trump attorney Alina Habba sought to discredit Cohen as a witness in cross-examination at the time. And it says that she questioned him after he said he was not actually guilty of tax evasion, despite pleading guilty to it in 2018 and getting him to acknowledge it was the first time he had said that in open court. Trump attorney Christopher Kise said Cohen has now admitted to perjury in front of the court. And after lawyers for the Attorney General objected to the line of questioning, calling it a circus, Kise said, "There's nothing wrong with calling a liar a liar." Later in Habba's cross-examination, Cohen also said he was lying under oath in congressional testimony that he gave in 2019. He admitted to lying twice in court, in which he denied any recollection of Trump ever asking him or Weiselberg to inflate numbers or financial statements, which should have undone the whole argument in the first place, by the way. After the court's lunch break, however, Cohen reversed course and denied he had lied in that congressional testimony after all, saying he told the truth. It seems that the truth is flexible in this case, right? But Trump, meanwhile, was also hit with a gag order in the recent case, right? This case, just like a lot of the other ones, they try to say that Trump can't talk about the judge, can't talk about the jury, can't talk about the prosecutors and so on. They try to make it so Trump can't talk about the case. He just has to close his mouth and show up for court and just be quiet and not campaign and not try to become president again because they're, of course, attacking with these things. He's not allowed to call it out. He's not allowed to criticize it. But then Trump said, no, he's not going to do that. He's not going to be silent. And he, of course, also said, yeah, throw him in prison. He dared them. He literally dared them to throw him in prison, saying he will not remain silent. Now, I'll be talking more about this, though, after a quick word from our sponsor.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Now, look, the first criminal trial for former President Donald Trump began yesterday, and there's a lot happening with this, one of which being Trump being hit with a gag order and Trump saying he's not going to follow it. Trump made it clear that he would not remain silent, and Trump dared Alvin Bragg and others to throw him in prison. He said, "Make me Mandela, make me the next Mandela." And Trump has stood by his point that these charges aren't really about upholding the law, in his opinion. Trump argues these charges are just a form of election interference, that these are politicized attacks meant to stop him from campaigning when, again, he's the leading candidate for the Republican Party. He's the, of course, nominee for the Republicans. He's representing half the country, and he can't campaign for 2 months because he has to stand trial in New York on a charge that was a misdemeanor past the statute of limitations that this corrupt, in my opinion, DA elevated into 34 felonies. And of course, were designed by Democrats, he says, to damage him politically. Watch.
Our nation is right now crossing a very dangerous threshold in the middle of a presidential election, right smack in the middle. Crooked Joe Biden and his entire corrupt party are staging a show trial of their leading political opponent, me. They want me to go on trial. It's totally crooked. It's totally corrupt. It's never been done before. In a completely illegitimate act of election interference, they're trying to jail their opposition as if they were Stalinist Russian or communist Chinese or Castro's Cuba or socialist Venezuela. As you witness this Biden trial, I ask all Americans to remember that this is not just about me. This is about our country, and this is about you. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent, we should all be horrified by the corruption of the system of justice. What's taking place in our country has never happened before. They go after Biden's political opponent because he can't do it. He's weak. He's ineffective. He's totally out of it. He can't walk off a stage from a speech, and he can't put two sentences together. So how do you do it? Go after his opponent. This is Biden attacking democracy, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time.
Now, after this, Trump then goes on to list the other Democrat plots to lie about him and undermine his presidency. Trump notes that this is just the continuation of the same exact pattern that he faced before he was president, when he was running, of course, in 2016, while he was president, when he was leaving the office, and now that he's trying to run again. That over and over and over again, his political enemies have framed lie after lie and hoax after hoax and false news attack and attempt to impeach him and now criminally charge him over and over and over again. Trump says this is just the continuation of that exact same thing. The only difference now is that his political enemies are now in office, hold the levers of power, and they're using the levers of power against him. Trump says that this is in line with the Trump-Russia hoax, where again the Democrats and it was again the DNC and the Clinton campaign falsified information. They got a former British spy, Christopher Steele, to go to unverified Russian sources, who then concocted a document, the PP dossier, I think people call it now, accusing Trump of having ties to Vladimir Putin and so on. It turned out the entire thing was fake, but they took that false information collected from unverified Russian sources, actual Russian disinformation, and then used that to try to prevent Trump from running for office, and then used it to try to impeach the President of the United States, knowingly using what was actual Russian disinformation to accuse Trump of using Russian disinformation. There was also the call Trump had with Ukraine on the quid pro quo allegations, when Trump was talking about reappointing the prosecutor who was looking into Hunter Biden, who Joe Biden admitted on stage during a speech that he had a hand in removing, meaning Biden was using actual quid pro quo by his admission on stage in front of an entire audience on video, by the way. And Trump's the one who got charged with that, and they tried again removing him from office. They tried to impeach the president using that. And so on and so on and so on. Scandal after scandal, up to right now what's happening. Trump notes that Joe Biden is getting off in the classified documents case as well. He notes that Trump, when he was accused of taking classified documents, Trump was protected by the Presidential Records Act, meaning presidents have broad ability to declassify documents and cannot normally be charged with that. They tried going after Trump anyway. Remember, Bill Clinton did the same thing. There was the whole sock scandal, Sockgate, where Bill Clinton was smuggling classified documents out in his socks. Strange behavior, I would say. But of course, Joe Biden, when he was taking classified documents, which is now known, was not president at the time. And Joe Biden, when of course he was not president, took home these classified documents and of course has now been shown to have done that, knowingly committed crimes according to the special counsel who investigated it, but allegedly can't be criminally charged because he's mentally incapable of standing before a jury. That's according to the special counsel, not me just saying that, folks. And Trump goes on to note that Hillary Clinton destroyed her documents and some records from her email servers. Her team literally smashed their phones with hammers and then used a software system called BleachBit to erase their servers in order to destroy evidence, which then prevented further investigations into the allegations against her. And Trump's questioning, why is he being charged when these other very bizarre cases are not being prosecuted right now, right? And Trump also points to the issue of foreign money tied in with the Biden family, which is, of course, being investigated by House Republicans right now. And then Trump talks about the other issues with the Democrats. He says Democrats want to flood the country with illegal aliens, pay them off with American taxpayer dollars, and then give them the right to vote. And by the way, there's a new document circulating right now from one of the NGOs facilitating mass migration in Mexico, telling people to remember to vote for Biden once they get into the United States. This is now making rounds, by the way. And Trump says as well, they want to phase out gas cars, force people to get electric cars, and so on and so forth, saying again that these people are crooks and they're trying to get him, and if he doesn't get in, this is what waits for us. And then Trump goes into the bigger problem of weaponized law and allegations that Biden's and his administration have been colluding together with the prosecutors or whoever else to create these charges against him. Now, remember, this is not just empty talk. All of these points have evidence backing up the claims. Take, for instance, the classified documents case I just briefly mentioned. Now, folks, remember, there was a special counsel appointed to investigate whether Joe Biden illegally took classified documents before he was president, meaning he would not have presidential protection under the Presidential Records Act. This is how that one went down. ABC News said at the time, special counsel Robert Hur said he will not recommend charges against President Joe Biden for his handling of classified documents while out of office. I think they mean to say before he was president, meaning, of course, it's illegal. Despite, again, quote, finding evidence that Biden, quote unquote, according to the actual document, willfully retained materials capping a year-long investigation that loomed over the 2024 presidential election. Remember, folks, when you're criminally charged with something, knowingly committing the crime is what makes it big. If you did it willfully, if you did it knowingly, then it's a crime. And of course, the special counsel report, the actual document, said that Biden willfully retained these documents and added, quote, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter," quote, end quote, said Hur's report, and then noted, quote, "We would conclude the same even if there was no policy against charging a sitting president." Why is that? Well, they say this was despite the fact that the special counsel, quote, uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified information after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen, according to the actual report. And it adds, quote, "These materials included marked classified documents." Remember the whole thing about unmarked or unmarked classified documents and Trump's charges and so on? The Biden documents had, quote, marked classified documents about military and foreign policy in Afghanistan, and 2 notebooks containing Mr. Biden's handwritten entries about issues of national security and foreign policy implicating sensitive intelligence sources and methods, said the report. It notes the materials were found in the garage, offices, and basement den in Mr. Biden's Wilmington, Delaware home, where Hunter Biden was staying in many cases, by the way. His driver's license actually had that place listed as his home address, which makes you wonder. While Hunter Biden was wheeling and dealing and, of course, peddling influence he's being accused of, were these classified documents being exposed to him as they were stored in multiple parts of that home? We may never know. But further when it says, notably, the special counsel, believed that at trial, Biden could come across not only as sympathetic, again, keep in mind this is why they're not charging him criminally despite evidence that he knowingly violated the law, but it says that they would find Joe Biden, forgetful and not capable of willfulness required to convict. Joe Biden would not be capable or demonstrate willfulness to convict, meaning he would not be mentally stable or present enough. His cognitive functions would not be strong enough to demonstrate that he was willfully present to stand trial, and therefore should not stand trial? This is the exact quote. They say, quote, "We have also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury as he did during our interview with him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory," the report said. In other words, he's suffering such significant cognitive decline, according to the special counsel, that he cannot stand trial. And if he can't stand trial, why is he running for president? One of the bigger questions. On Joe Biden's part, he's saying that this was an attack against him. And that's not totally without warrant. It does seem to be the case that there are people within the Democrat Party or the establishment who also don't want Biden running because they think he can't win against Trump. And so they're trying to push him out. And so Biden said that this was that kind of attack against him. But back to the point Trump made that he can't get a fair trial in New York, right? Well, Trump's probably right. Do you know a single person, folks? Answer me. Think about every person you know, your friends, your family, people you grew up with. Do you know a single person out of everybody you know? Is there anyone who does not have an opinion on Donald J. Trump? Do you know anyone? Now look, a lot of how people perceive Trump is based on which media they're following, right? If you've been following the big corporate media, well, they've been lying about him in fake scandal after fake scandal. His entire presidency was marked by just rolling fake news. They were attacking him nonstop, and of course, as the lies were getting exposed, they never really corrected the record, so to speak, and they just pulled up the next big scandal. But even beyond that, right, just about everyone has an opinion on Trump's demeanor or his character or something else, right? He was the president of the United States. And as the Republican nominee, Trump represents one of the country's two main political parties. If you're a Republican, you might support Trump, and if you're a Democrat, you might not support Trump. Is there any person in this entire country who does not have an established opinion on Trump one way or the other? Well, look, that's one of the issues of trying to criminally charge a former president, something in and of itself we've never seen before, let alone charging using very shady and tricky and unstable legal means. Normally, you would think that if you're going to do something like this, it's never happened before, not even just charging a former president, but going after one of the main nominees for the upcoming elections and preventing them from campaigning. If this happened in a third world country, we would say it's a banana republic. We would say that this is just election rigging, frankly, if this happened in like Afghanistan, we'd be rolling our eyes saying, look at how corrupt they are. And it's happening right here in the United States, and people, well, maybe people don't think it's normal, but some people apparently do. But look, this is already becoming an issue in the New York case, on the issue of whether Trump can actually get a fair trial. And this became very evident yesterday on Monday when they tried picking jurors, because guess what? More than 50 jurors were already dismissed. The Epoch Times said that more than half the prospective jurors were dismissed during the first day of former President Donald Trump's so-called hush money trial on Monday. 96 possible jurors were asked by Judge Juan Merchan if they could be fair or impartial, and more than half raised their hand to indicate they could not, according to press poll reporters who estimated that at least 50 were let go for that reason alone. Here's a quote. "If you have an honest, legitimate, good faith reason to believe you cannot serve on this case or cannot be fair and impartial, please let me know now," the judge specifically asked the jury pool in court on Monday, drawing the hand-raising response. And quote, "I would raise the question, personally, of whether the jury members who raised their hands saying they couldn't be impartial, maybe those were the honest ones, because I doubt anybody could be impartial. I doubt anyone could. Maybe the ones who raised their hands and admitted that they could not be impartial were the ones who were telling the truth." Because again, it raises questions over whether the ones who chose to remain silent can actually be impartial, because I would argue nobody can on Trump. Everyone has an opinion on him. Now back to the current case though. Donald Trump will have to show up every single day in court, at least every day of the normal work week. And this trial is expected to last around 2 months. This means that Trump, the nominee for the Republican Party, one of the main political parties, the leading candidate in most polls, will not be able to campaign for around 2 months, and they might charge him with other stuff after that because there's other cases. This is happening right ahead of the elections. I would call this massive election interference. Again, if this happened in Nicaragua or like Afghanistan or Zimbabwe, we would say, look at this crazy country and look at how corrupt this is. Americans would be rolling their eyes at how ridiculous it is. This is happening in the United States of America. We are making the worst banana republics look credible. Even in the worst cases, they at least try to hide it. Even in the worst cases of election interference in third world countries, they at least try to cover up what they're doing. This is out in the open, totally clear, and frankly, they're doing it over and over again on a huge scale. Now, the New York judge isn't even making an exception to this requirement to let Trump appear before the Supreme Court in an upcoming case on whether Trump has presidential immunity from these types of criminal prosecution. Folks, Trump is supposed to show up in court Thursday next week. The Supreme Court of the United States. He's supposed to show up. And the judge in New York is not going to let him. Now, after Trump learned he has to show up in court every day, regardless of any of this, Trump gave some statements to the media. And Trump mentioned that he cannot even attend Barron Trump's graduation. He mentioned the hypocrisy with the Soros-backed DA, and he is, focusing on this case, while serious crimes go relatively unpunished all around New York City. And he raised his many concerns with what's now taking place. Here is what Trump had to say. Watch.
It's a scam. It's a political witch hunt. It continues, and it continues forever. And we're not going to be given a fair trial. It's a very, very sad thing. In addition, as you know, next Thursday, we're before the United States Supreme Court on a very big hearing on immunity. And this is something that we've been waiting for a long time. And the judge, of course, is not going to allow us. He's a very conflicted judge, and he's not going to allow us to go to that. He won't allow me to leave here for a half a day, go to D.C. and go before the United States Supreme Court because he thinks he's superior, I guess, to the Supreme Court. We got a real problem with this judge. We have a real problem with a lot of things having to do with this trial, including the DA. Because you go right outside and people are being mugged and killed all day long, and he's sitting here all day with about 10 or 12 prosecutors over nothing, over what people say shouldn't be a trial. So I just want to thank you very much, but that I can't go to my son's graduation, or that I can't go to the United States Supreme Court, that I'm not in Georgia or Florida or North Carolina campaigning like I should be. It's perfect for the radical left Democrats. That's exactly what they want. This is about election interference. That's all it's about.
Well, look, this is going to be the first of many. We're probably going to see a couple other court cases where Trump has to stand trial before the election. Some of those are not going to be done even after the election, so we'll see how that affects him even if he wins. But given this situation, now I mentioned there's going to be a couple of the big cases coming up. This Friday is going to be the January 6th case. And that case is going to be looking at whether, again, disrupting an official proceeding can be applied to disrupting Congress or disrupting the counting of the Electoral College votes. I would argue that the protests on January 6th obviously did not disrupt that because they finished their job that day anyways. They counted the Electoral College votes, and it did not actually disrupt that process beyond a few hours maybe. The case is nonsense on that ground alone, but the bigger part is that, of course, disrupting an official proceeding was not about that. That charge was about Enron, and it was specifically about destroying documents needed for legal cases. The Supreme Court is going to be hearing that case on Friday. And depending on which way it goes, and personally I think they're going to side more with, frankly, the Trump supporters and the J6ers. I think they're going to decide, frankly, that it should not be applied this way. And if that is the case, that means the entire narrative about insurrection, the entire narrative that Trump tried overthrowing democracy, the entire narrative on, again, the disrupting democracy and so on, that narrative is dead. Friday will determine that. And if, of course, the judges overturn that this coming Friday, that also means that basically a lot of the cases where people have been charged with that or had plea deals with that and so on, their cases are going to have to be retried. And the only charges they're going to be able to slap them with are like parading and protesting or, trespassing on federal grounds. And that's it. Meaning J6 as an entire narrative could live or die this Friday. Also, I mentioned on Thursday, Trump is going to be, of course, dealing with the other big case, the presidential immunity case. Just to clarify, that is next Thursday, not this Thursday. But that's also going to be a big one because the Supreme Court is going to determine whether a former president, or president for that matter, can face criminal charges. Again, a lot of this stuff, it's unprecedented. We've never seen it happen before. Democrats are doing things that have never in this country happened. This has never been done before. And over, case by case, one after the next, they're doing things that have never been done before. Over and over again. We will find out next Thursday whether or not this is legal. Now, again, there's more to it, folks, so stay tuned. And that said, let's jump into some questions. I'll be keeping you updated on these cases as well. All right, let's see. First question from Geoffrey Webster. You're saying 49 years of law. Wow, that's good stuff. You're saying, I cannot count the number of times agreements have been written which requires silence by all parties. Every contract requires consideration be exchanged between all parties or the contract is not enforceable. You're talking about the alleged hush money case to Stormy Daniels and this other woman, right? You're saying the prosecution must be hoping for a really dumb jury and a really dumb judge or a complicit judge. This would be a case dead on arrival for ordinary people. Yeah, from what I understand, that'd be the case too. Even outside of the fact that Stormy Daniels, year after year, multiple times denied anything happened, despite the fact that Stormy Daniels actually signed a document, which is, again, I don't know if that would count as perjury if she says she lied on it, has a written document saying, again, denying everything, and then decides to change her narrative, and then Trump gets charged with all this stuff while she gets pretty dang famous through the process. I would wonder the legalities of that, and I would wonder about, just again, the legalities of a signed agreement, like you mentioned, requiring silence by all parties on something. If, frankly, they are going against a signed agreement, you would wonder if they were the ones committing the crime by breaking that agreement. But again, the thing Trump is being charged with is the concept or idea that, again, they had some funny business with their legal documents. That is also shaky. Remember, they tried prosecuting on that before. Michael Cohen was not deemed a reliable witness on that because of his track record of lying and also, other problems. Even Cohen was sowing some doubt, let's say, on the validity of this charge, meaning the entire thing was shaky. It seems they just rolled with whatever they could find. And that's even beside the point that it was a misdemeanor that was elevated into 34 felonies, and also outside the point that it was a misdemeanor that was already past the statute of limitations. They had to turn that into a felony in order to push it beyond the statute of limitations, or in order to make it so it's not past the statute of limitations. They had to change the law to charge him with this. It blows my mind, right? California gal, you're saying, isn't ignorance of the law not an excuse? Aren't people still guilty even if they are ignorant? Even if they are ignorant of the law they broke? There's some funny ground to that. You have to, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't apply in every case. But for the most part, you have to know that you are breaking the law to be charged with something. There are some exceptions to that. You know, there's negligent manslaughter, for example. You might accidentally do something that harms somebody else, and you can still be charged with that, meaning you didn't mean to do it, you didn't do it knowingly, but you still did it, and so you can be charged, right? There's negligence, but they could argue that you were knowingly negligent. They would have to demonstrate that you maybe left the gun on the table and someone shot themselves with it or something like that. I don't know if that would even count as negligent homicide. Even that wouldn't count. It's a funny gray area from what I understand. At the same time, though, you can also be charged for being, bikes. You can get charged as an extension of a crime. For example, if you're friends with somebody who is committing robberies and you hang out with them, you can get charged by extension in some cases. So there are weird loopholes to this and so on. It's not absolute, but whether you knowingly were involved is usually something taken into serious consideration on the charges and the weight of the crime, from what I understand. U.S. citizen on the ground, you're saying, again, what are the communists thinking? I wonder if they're thinking, frankly. I think that they're thinking they hate Trump. I've mentioned, again, that Trump has a weird effect on the left. He has not just, I shouldn't even say the left, he has a weird effect on communists because you have some in the deep state on both the right and the left. Trump has a weird effect on them. He has almost like an exorcist effect where you can have people who spent their entire careers with a very clean demeanor, well presented, your Barack Obama types and so on. They speak very well. They're considered respectable and cool. Your Jon Stewart types, people who are just seen as having a good public image. And Trump comes on the scene and they can't keep their cool anymore. They lose face. They freak out. They have meltdowns on camera. They can't hold it in. Trump has a weird effect on them where he causes them to make themselves look like idiots. He causes them to demonstrate their bias. He causes them to flip out. And in the process of that, he causes a lot of them to destroy their careers and to destroy their public images. It's not Trump doing it. Maybe he is somehow, but it's just a weird effect he has on these people. And I think he's causing the Justice Department right now to demonstrate the elements of politicization. He's causing the Biden administration right now to basically focus their entire campaign on hating Trump. What is Biden campaigning on? He's campaigning on not being Donald Trump and on hating Donald Trump. In fact, a lot of Democrat voters are not voting because they like Joe Biden. They're voting because they hate Trump. He has a weird effect on these people. Maybe you all have an idea of why that is. It's the Trump effect. Again, I painted it like an exorcist type effect he has. It's like he's like holy water, just being flung on their faces. It's a bizarre thing to watch, right? Let's see, Cal Meister, you're saying Trump doesn't need to campaign to win the election. I think you're right. You said the last few years is an indictment of the Democrats in general, and the Biden regime in particular. Actually, I was talking about this with a colleague this morning because Trump's showing up for court right now. While we're speaking, he's in court. Trump doesn't really need to campaign. I think you're right on that. What Trump is doing more so with campaigning, though, is I think he's trying to restore hope among his voter base. A lot of Trump supporters believe that the country is going in a very bad direction. A lot of them believe that the elections were rigged. I would agree, personally. A lot of them believe that they wonder if it's going to count when they go and cast their ballots. And they look at the damage being done to this country and they say, how can we ever fix this? How can we ever turn back? When Trump is campaigning, his stance more isn't trying to reach people who don't kind of already agree with him. His stance is trying to tell people there is still hope. The country can be saved. You should still vote, even if you think there are going to be problems. And he's telling them they're going to do everything they can to make sure the elections are going to be secure to the extent they can. And that's his message, right? That's what he's campaigning on. And he's saying, look, yes, the country is going in a terrible direction. And if we don't fix it, it could be the end of it, frankly. And that's his campaign, right? I think you're right that he doesn't technically need to campaign, but I would say if he uses this well. Because what Trump is doing right now, which this morning I had a discussion with a colleague about this, I was like, I think this actually might benefit him more than it's going to harm him. Because when Trump campaigns, he's talking to mostly existing Trump supporters. He's talking to people who, for the most part, will already vote for him. But the people he's not talking to are the ones in the mainstream media, the big corporate media, the people who would otherwise not hear anything he has to say. They would not normally hear his side of the story. They would not normally see him or hear his policies or positions. They would not have any exposure to this. But by putting Trump on the center stage, facing criminal charges, and with every single media on the face of the planet with their cameras turned towards him, with what are ridiculous charges, frankly. I think most rational people can recognize these are ridiculous, unstable, clown world type charges. They are ridiculous. It is an absolute clown show. And anybody with even basic logic, I think, can recognize this. Trump will be exposed to those people. He's not going to get the radicals. He's not going to get them. But there's also something happening even with the radicals. The radicals are turning against the Democrats because they're pro-Palestine. The radicals are pro-Hamas. And as Biden is, of course, getting behind Israel and its war possibly against Iran, at the very least against Hamas, which is going, of course, into other surrounding countries like Lebanon and so on, Biden is, of course, splitting his base. The Democrat Party is really three parties right now. There's the communists, socialists, and radicals. Almost to a T, they support Gaza. And of course, you have your Black Lives Matter folks in there as well, who also feel that that Biden kind of sidelined them and didn't give them anything. Biden risks losing the radicals because of this. They might not vote for him. Biden is also risking losing the moderates, the people in the center of the party, because a lot of them are going to RFK Jr. The moderates, the people who say, I didn't leave the Democrat Party left me, they're pulling out of the party as well. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They're getting behind other candidates. They don't like Biden. And so what's Biden left with? He's left with the big corporatists and the warmongers, the old Republican Party, basically. He's left with the Bush-era Republicans and some of the business-oriented Clinton Democrats, the unions and bosses and the big corporations and so on, and that's about it. And the military-industrial complex people. If the moderates pull out and Biden is only left with the radicals and the old Democrats and old Republicans, the warmongers and big corporatists, they're going to tear each other apart. They don't get along with each other. The moderates are what stand between the two sides of that. The communists hate those people. Those people hate the communists. They're not going to get along. And so if the moderates leave for RFK Jr., the Democrat Party splits. If the radicals leave the party, they might have a chance still. It'll be, if it's the moderates and those, the corporatists and military-industrial complex types, then it's going to be more like, Clinton-era Democrat Party. And they might be able to hold it together. But losing, again, the moderates is what's going to split the party. It doesn't look like they can hold the Democrats together anymore. And so while this takes place, while the radicals are protesting against Biden, they're looking at Trump, Biden's political enemy, being charged with ridiculous charges. Some of them might even vote for Trump. Some of them who are not on the far crazy end of it might even vote for Trump. A lot of the moderates, I don't think they're going to vote for Trump because they hate Trump, but they might vote for RFK Jr. And they're going to look at Trump and say, you know what, I hate the guy, but this is ridiculous. I'm not going to support this party anymore. They're going to pull out of it. And so Trump having this kind of exposure, ironically, will probably be more beneficial to him than if he was campaigning. It's bizarre, frankly. And it's making people really worried about the country, because if you want to destroy a republic, destroy the legal system. That was the beginning of the fall. Well, a lot of things led to it, but one of the key factors that brought an end to the Roman Republic was the corruption of the judicial system. And again, remember, the American system of government is based off of Rome. Our architecture is based on Roman architecture. The American concepts of a republic are based on the Roman ideas of the republic. Even the American character, Stoicism and so on, is based heavily in Roman philosophy. The American military is modeled after the Roman military. America is modeled after Rome in a lot of ways. But we're modeled after Rome in the Republican era, right? The Roman Republic, and specifically the idea of having a Senate and, again, courts and divisions of power and so on. Even separation of church and state is a Roman concept introduced by the second emperor, the second king of Rome. That was Numa, right? King Numa. And so if you understand what happened to Rome, look at what's happening now. As soon as you politicize the justice system, it means that justice is then an arm of an official or a tyranny or a state. Meaning, justice is no longer true justice. It has become politicized. And when that happens, you eliminate the divisions of power. And what does it mean when you've eliminated the divisions of power? It means you have a dictatorship. It means you have a single supreme leader who is able to control the system in any way he wants, not an independent legal system. And so as soon as you destroy that, that is the end of the republic. And America, with politicized justice, is on the cusp of this right now. Angela Diaz, you're saying, shouldn't it be suspicious for everyone in the country that the Democrats are all innocent and the conservatives are all guilty? But again, yeah, I agree with you. But again, I think that they're pushing it to such an extreme that it's too obvious. I mean, again, I'm concerned about politicized justice. I know from history, this is how republics die. This will destroy the American republic if it is able to continue. Maybe we'll be reformed. Maybe we'll have an emperor. I don't know if you look at the way republics went in the past. But it's not a good thing if you care about this country. It marks the end of a republic if that is able to happen. In other words, the country is going to have to be reformed one way or the other. If the country is going to be saved, there has to be some kind of reform. There has to be some kind of judicial reform to make sure it cannot be politicized like this in the future. There probably need to be arrests or cases and trials of individuals involved in politicization of the justice system. There needs to be something to restore the integrity of our legal system. Without that, I don't think it can be saved. And one way or the other, the system is going to be reformed, whether it's, again, fixing the justice system and fixing corrupt politics and so on, and uprooting and weeding out the corruption. Either that needs to happen, or it will become entrenched and we will become a tyranny. It's going to become one or the other. And we'll see, frankly, how it goes. I think this election actually will determine that. At the same time, though, in the meantime, we are still a republic with an election process. And I think voters are witnessing this because it's being done so blatantly, so completely obviously, and they're not trying to hide it. And I would say part of that is, again, the Trump effect. Trump makes it so these people can't keep a straight face. He has some weird effect on them where they can't hide it. They just reveal whatever's inside of them. It's like possessed people, frankly. Trump has like an exorcist effect on them. Just kind of accurately, I think that's the best way to describe it. And so they don't hide it very well. People see it, and I would say people are actually smarter than the ivory tower gives them credit for. The average American is a pretty smart person, actually, even though they get branded as flyover country and all this stuff. Your average American is more sensible than your ivory tower, socialist, frankly. They are smarter than them. The ivory tower socialist has lost the ability of independent thinking. The average American has a pretty dang strong ability for independent thinking. Michael Kolovsky, you're saying those people took oaths to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Knowing the law and being bound to know the law are synonymous. Yeah, one of the things that really shocked me on the note of taking an oath to defend the Constitution and so on and interpreting what the Constitution means, when I was investigating, for example, the vaccine mandates on the military, I did a special feature on that, you might remember. One of the things I came across was military doctrine telling, because a lot of troops were saying, it's against my sincerely held beliefs, which is your, could be your religion or whatever else, but the technical wording is your sincerely held beliefs. They were saying it goes against my sincerely held beliefs to put this in my body. I don't want it. And so on religious grounds, they were saying that they cannot get the vaccine. It goes against their beliefs. What they were being told in official military guidance was that it is not their place to interpret the Constitution. Well, if it's not our place to interpret the Constitution, then who's the gatekeeper of it? Who decides? What if the people who are deemed the gatekeepers decide to abuse it? What if they're the problem? What if they're violating the Constitution, which I think they were, and I think they still are? What happens then? Should it really be that the average citizen should not take law into account because it's not our place to understand law because we're not lawyers? Should we not be able to criticize the trans movement because we're not biologists? You might have heard before. What kind of thinking is this? What kind of crazy thinking is that? Americans shouldn't have the right to interpret the Constitution, a very easy to read document, by the way, that has been interpreted into stacks of documents. I think actually it was made to be interpreted very simply because the Constitution is something every one of us is supposed to uphold. And every single elected official, every single sworn-in police officer, every single member of our military takes an oath personally to uphold and defend the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic. That means that they themselves have to be, and assigned through their oaths, the vanguard, the people watching for violations of it. And if they are not able to interpret it, and if they're told they can't interpret it, then what does their oath even mean, frankly? I think it was ridiculous the way that was put out there. And I think without a doubt, every single person should read the Constitution and should interpret it in the way that they will, because I think it's a very easy to interpret document that has been over-interpreted because of this legal limbo taking place where people want to twist it and violate it. I'd say it's the people trying to destroy it, frankly, who are the ones interpreting it into piles and piles of documents. Flying Squirrel, you're saying President Trump really loves our country. The left can't stomach that. I'm starting to believe that might be what it is. I think America has absolutely been subverted by communists. Some books on this, None Dare Call It Treason. I would also recommend Enemies Within by Trevor Loudon. Great books that describe how the United States has been subverted by people who want to destroy it. And I think, frankly, there are traitors in our midst, so to speak. I think there are absolutely people who want to destroy this country, who have gotten into areas of power, and they look at Donald Trump saying, "Make America great again," and it makes them seethe. They can't take that. They hate that. And I think what you're watching is as Trump keeps saying, not necessarily an attack on him, but an attack on the country itself. He's just standing in the way. There are people who hate this country. And I'd say, frankly, the policies like mass illegal immigration are a clear example of that. They don't believe that Americans should be the future of this country. They believe that we should tear it down. We should just become some globalist state. The people who want to get rid of the Constitution, get rid of the Electoral College, people who want to uproot our entire legal system. I'd say these are people who hate this country for what it is, and because they hate it, they want to turn it into something else and then accuse us of being hateful because we don't like them trying to destroy what is. They hate what we are, and that's why they're trying to change it, frankly, right? Mr. Cloud, you're saying Trump is simply a litmus test for sanity. It's another way to explain it. I'd agree, and I think he's making the insane demonstrate their mental capacity, or lack thereof. All right, folks, that said, join me tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be talking more about what's going on. There's a lot going on. Again, Trump trials are happening. I'll keep you updated as needed. If something big happens, I'll keep you updated on it. Also, heck, we'll see what happens. Israel might be launching a counterattack against Iran. There were some signs of it just before I went to the show today that they might be planning for it or might be preparing for it. They're saying they're going to do it. We'll see what happens with that. And also, again, this Friday is going to be the big J6 case, and next Thursday is going to be the presidential immunity case. There's a lot going on right now, and there's a lot of other wild stuff, like the World Health Organization trying to get this pandemic treaty signed and so on. I'm paying attention to all of it, and I'll be talking to you very soon about all this as well. That said, folks, join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for being here, and as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.